Welcome back to the baseball show. I am one of your hosts, Andy Singleton. That's our other host over there, Ralph Lifshitz. Hope you're enjoying this series. Hope you're having a good time talking baseball, getting ready. Hot stove, calendars turned. We're in 2017 now, so it's time to really start prepping and getting ready, familiarizing yourself with some players. So thank you for checking out our series. Hope you enjoyed the 3 pitches we did yesterday. We're getting into 3 hitters today. Trea Turner, Giancarlo Stanton, and crazy Mark Trumbo. I don't know why. He's not crazy. I just added that for no apparent reason at all. But let's start things right off the bat with Trea Turner. It works. Trea Turner, he went from being a highly desired prospect to possibly a delayed status to get to the big leagues to potentially the greatest player of all time in the game. He is offering positional versatility. He's a real, true, genuine 30-30 threat. His nickname should be the philanthropist because he's contributing to every category. I'm just curious, are we overreacting, or is this the coolest kid in the room and we should all be targeting him everywhere we go? Because he's currently being drafted as the 13th player off the board according to NFBC ADP data. So I know you love him. I don't know if you love him as much as Benintendi, but why should we or should we not be all in with Trea Turner?
Well, he was ranked ahead of Benintendi in midseason last year. I had Bregman 1, I had Glasnow 2, and I actually had Turner 3, and people were killing me for it. But I said right off the bat, this guy is a dynamic offensive force at the top of the lineup. This is a Jacoby Ellsbury type player in his prime, whatever you want to say. I don't think that the power that we saw last year is what he's going to be. I don't think he's going to be a guy that has, a mid-5 slugging percentage. I think he's somebody that probably will hit about 16 to 20 homers in his average seasons. I don't know if about 30 homer type of stuff. He's a speedster. He's a leadoff hitter. He's going to get on base. He probably is going to walk more than he did last year. I don't know if he's going to hit 340 or whatever it was. It was 343. I just looked it up. I think he's probably more like a 290 hitter. I could see 90 to 100 runs almost every single season. He's going to be a run-producing player. I think speed is really, what his biggest asset is, what his greatest tool is. And he's got some pop to go with it, too. I mean, he hits the ball really, really hard. You can look at his batted ball data. I won't go through that right now. But he is a guy that makes great contact. But he's a guy that's going to steal 40 bases. And I think he's always going to be able to get on base, hit for a high average and score a lot of runs. But the question with Turner is really, is he going to hit 30 homers? I mean, he hit 13 and such a truncated season last year. It was 73 games that he was up. And I was killing myself because I had him on so many different redraft teams and I kept on holding him, waiting for him to get called up. He gets called up for that one game. He goes 3 for 3 with 3 runs scored and then goes back down again to Syracuse. And he was just kind of waiting there while they had Danny Espinosa. And even Espinosa, when he had that one great month in July when they actually ended up calling Turner up, I mean, his OPS was still like 7-something after, 3 months of being completely awful. And he slugged, his OPS was like, 1,100 in that month. Turner is the goods. He's going to be the second best, offensive player in that team. Do I think he's a power hitter? No, I don't think he's going to hit 30 home runs. But like I said, I think, a 290 average, 90 to 100 runs, somewhere with like 16 to 20 homers and, maybe, 60s in terms of RBIs and potentially 40 steals or more. He's got great speed. And the best part about him, he's going to have second base, outfield, and shortstop eligibility. They shipped Espinosa out of town. He's penciled in as your everyday shortstop.
Yeah, and the last part is what you really, I think, adds to his value, why he's going as high as 13th. If he's just a shortstop, I see him falling back a few places. I mean, obviously everybody wants him. The hype is real. He is a good player, as you mentioned. But is he really going to be any better than any of the other boatload of young shortstops in the game? No, they're in the same level. And, you can wait on a guy. But when you get second base eligibility, outfield eligibility, and shortstop eligibility, all of a sudden that's a skill set nobody else is offering you in fantasy this season to be able to put up the stat line he can. So I don't know if 13 is even high enough for him. I think I'd be willing to reach for him right outside of the top 5. I mean, he's in that category for me. If in fact you believe he is the goods and he is the real deal, I think I think he's proven himself enough at this point. And if you trust Ralph at all, then as he said, he's definitely the goods. So Trea Turner, if you were curious, worried, on the fence, you got two guys here that are definitely buying and believing him. And if that sticks, if that nickname I've given him now, the philanthropist sticks, I want some credit. Maybe we'll have to get some T-shirts made up for him or something like that. We'll see if we can get his agent on the line.
We'll just have we'll have a roto stat line and just have him dropping coins in there,
yes,
dropping dimes on everybody. Yeah, and the thing I like about a guy like him too, I just want to make one more point on Turner, is a player like that, his peak skill set when he's got his most value is when he's young and he's still athletic and he's still quick. He hasn't lost his speed. The bumps and bruises and nicks of playing the game every day haven't really gotten to him yet. So I think this guy, this year and for the next 2 or 3 years, that's probably when he's going to have his peak value. He's the kind of player that, the drop off could be relatively steep a few years down the road. So you do want to own him now. This is definitely the time to get in on Trea Turner.
Absolutely. So let's move on to a guy that feels young but is starting to age. I'm talking about Giancarlo Stanton. Are people forgetting how good this guy is? I mean, is it out of sight, out of mind? Is he his inability to finish a full season being made too much of? Should he go back to just being Mike? I've talked before about my love for players entering their age 27 season, especially being, when the power surge really begins. This guy is now in his 27th season. So it's just mind-boggling to think what he could do based on what, we think of when we think of Giancarlo Stanton. But surprisingly, he's never hit 40 homers in any season as a pro. And if you look, his 162 game average is barely 41 homers. So as much as we think of this guy as a huge power guy, he really hasn't translated as much as we want to think it has. So no one's doubting Stanton is really, really good, but is he more sexy than great? I mean, is he a great date or is he a great wife? And, there is a difference to that. So his ADP currently is 50th overall. He's the 8th outfielder being taken off the board. Is that, a little too high? Is that a little too rich for a guy like Stanton?
Yeah, I think he's still being drafted like he's the guy from 3 years ago that put up, that relatively big season when he played a whopping 141 games or whatever it was. If you look back in the last 5 years, since 2011, he hasn't had a single season, one season of like more than 140 games. He's hurt all the time, and it's not nagging injuries. He's getting hit with baseball, he's breaking bones, getting hit in the face with the baseball. I mean, it's all this sort of wacky stuff year after year after year. And at the end of the season, it's like, maybe he helps you and your team is killing it up until June. July, he gets hurt. You lose him for a few months. I know I had a team like that this year. And then it's like, what do I do now? This is your second round pick, your first round pick, even if it's your third round pick, it's kind of tough to recover from that. And I think in our mind, he's just, when you watch him play, like you said, he's so it's sexy. He kills a baseball. He kills a baseball. Nobody hits a ball, it seems like, harder than he does, farther than he does. I mean, he's just, mammoth, the natural kind of power. He's a big guy, all that sort of stuff. But he's not playing in a great ballpark. The lineup, is better than it has been in previous years, but it's still not great. And he's still going like, he's a stud player. And there should be a discount this year. If he's a guy that's kicking around in the 4th round in one of my drafts, I would absolutely take a chance on him. If you're taking him in the 2nd round or early 3rd, I'm staying away from that. I don't know if he's a top 40. I don't know if he's a top 40 draft pick. I really don't.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And one thing, not to get too off the topic, but people say these are freak injuries. They're not the same one. They're not, it's not a question of him per se or his physical makeup. I think of Jessica Alba in the movie Good Luck Chuck when I think of him, where she was just a klutz and just bad things. She just kept walking into things. It just kind of feels like that with Stanton. They might be freak injuries, but at what point is it, this is, I don't know. I don't want to label it that, but, anyway, you get the idea. I don't think he's the 8th outfielder that you should be drafting, though. So I do think Stanton is going a little bit too high for what you should be expecting from him. He's going to be really good if he plays and when he plays. But again, it's not so much about him playing or finishing a season. It's about, even if you look at his power numbers, they haven't been as good as, we kind of think they are, or it feels like they should be. So I would not saying stay away from Stanton. If he falls to you, great. But if you got to take him higher than he should be, which is where he's currently going, a little too rich for me. I think Ralph's agreeing with me.
Yeah, absolutely.
With that,
if he plays 150 games, though, you're going to look like a genius. The chances of him playing 150 games are slim to none, it seems.
Yep. So moving on to crazy Mark Trumbo, as he's now been named on this show. Believe it or not, Trumbo is almost identical to what Stanton is, only more reliable. Think about that for a minute. He's got 47 homers last year in the career rejuvenating Camden Yards. I'm curious, does he go the Nelson Cruz route, say, thank you very much, Baltimore, but I'll see you later, and leave, yet maintain his refound power stroke? That's what I'm curious about. He's the outfielder 12 off the board right now, which is 4 behind where Stanton's going, 54th overall, which again is 4 behind where Stanton's going overall. And like I said, you're getting pretty much the same stat line, only a guy that's doing it on a more consistent basis and has actually achieved nearly 50 homers at least once in his career now. So what's your take with Trumbo?
I think it depends where he lands. He's the kind of player that if he ends up landing in, Seattle, some sort of a pitcher's park, we've seen this before. We've seen some bad seasons from Trumbo. So I really want him to stay in Baltimore. I think the thing, that's hurting his value in real life baseball terms, in terms of the market team signing him, he's got a qualifying offer from Baltimore. So there would be a draft pick compensation due back to the Orioles from whatever team signs him, depending upon who signs him. The pick could be relatively high. I think it could turn out to be a first rounder. I'm not sure if I'm an owner, I want to do that for Mark Trumbo because, the power is great. He's a guy that if you can get him relatively late in your fantasy draft, I'd be all over him. Last year was the year to draft him. I don't think this year is. If you can get him in a trade, something like that, that's different. I'm not saying don't own him. He's not a guy that I'm going to draft, though. I just think he's going to go too early. There's too much risk. We've seen the down years from Trumbo. If he stays in Baltimore, I like that. I think his value is a lot higher. If he goes to some place like Colorado, which has been mentioned, oh my goodness. I mean, it'd be like if Chris Carter goes to Colorado. We've heard those rumors too. Oh my God. I mean, you get a guy like that in a ballpark like that, his batting average is going to go up, which has always been sort of, one of the issues with Trumbo is he's not great with batting average. If it's an OBP league, Trumbo hurts you there. Obviously, if you're just playing in standard 5x5 sort of categories, Trumbo's got more value because he hits tons of homers. And certainly he's a much better investment than Stanton. I think the talent with Stanton is obviously better when you watch just as like an evaluator. He's the better player. But at the end of the day, I'm probably more likely to own Trumbo based on where he goes, number one, and where he goes in your draft. Though at the same time, don't overdraft Trumbo. He's still not a guy I'm going to take in maybe top 60 players off the board.
Yeah, ironically, his poorest hitting performance was his short time in Arizona at Chase Field, which is supposed to be a hitter's haven. So that's kind of the irony with Trumbo in his career. I personally think he's a great buy for this season, especially if he stays in Baltimore. If he does wind up going to Colorado somehow, I think you could expect his ADP to jump a full 10 places just on what people are going to project for that. I think he's done it consistently enough to prove that I'm not too worried about him staying in the lineup, remaining in the lineup. And if he's in an AL park where he can get some DH days, I like it even more. So I think he's a 30-plus guaranteed guy. He's going to be in the 250 to 270 range. You hope for the higher side of that. And he's going to be approaching 100 RBI. So that's a guy I'm comfortable with having in my outfield. And I think that's pretty much his floor. So take it from me, take it from Ralph. You be the judge when it comes to your team. You can hit us up on Twitter. You can ask your questions anywhere. You can find us Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, name it. We're trying to cover it. This is the Baseball Show. These are 3 hitters that we think you should want in 2017. We'll see you next time.